As the culture war continues to ravage the video game space, there's one area that is constantly left neglected when it comes to discussing the rights of consumers, and that is the rights of consumers. Very few companies have any interest in maintaining or retaining the rights of consumers, and instead are much more willing to sell your data, force you to use console exclusives or marketplace exclusives with the Epic Games Store, and really pigeonhole you to certain areas that are completely unrealistic and disrespectful to the consumer in question. And this is most clearly being seen right now when you look at the crisis that's going on with PlayStation, as for, 12 hours the PlayStation Network was down with no ability to play most games. If you had any digital games, you can't play them. You couldn't play most of your physical games, you couldn't sync up your disc drive to play physical games to your PlayStation, and you couldn't access anything online on your PlayStation. The entire thing was bricked. And at the same time as there's this issue with PlayStation, out comes Steam making a statement that's really reinforcing the rights of players, as Steam is completely notorious for doing, putting the player above their exclusivity or their market share. Whereas one of the most important comments to come from the Steam marketplace is that they're not too worried about piracy, since they really believe that just by offering a superior platform, one that's convenient, one that doesn't charge you through the ass, and one that doesn't try to screw you every opportunity, is going to lead people to just be willing to pay for the games. Because ultimately, piracy is driven out of a lack of convenience. People don't pirate games if they're easily accessible. People don't pirate movies if they're easily accessible. It's only when it's restricted or when it's expensive that people bother looking to pirate things. Most of the time. And I'm sure this debate over customer protection between different things, as well as this Kabbalistic obsession people have over associating with a brand over what's best for them, will continue for a very long time. This right here is a very important point to note in that battle, as it might lead to a shift in how people perceive their relationship to their consoles. So before getting further, like, subscribe, and let's get into this. So first, coming from that Park Place, Sony experiences PSN outage over the weekend. Company cites operational issues as cause despite users' fears of data breach. Sony's PlayStation Network, PSN, has finally restored full functionality after hours-long outage that left millions of players unable to connect over the weekend. The disruption, which began late Friday and lasted through much of Saturday, prevented users from accessing online multiplayer games, purchasing content, and even playing some single-player titles due to the digital verification requirements. Now, interesting enough, despite the fact that this was an outage with PSN, it doesn't look like the Steam games that demanded PSN as well, such as God of War Ragnarok or Spider-Man 2, were down as well. These games seem to be still up and seem to be fully operational, at least as far as SteamDB numbers would suggest. Though these games also have depressingly low numbers. Sony Interactive Entertainment confirmed on Sunday that services were back online, offering a brief apology and a small consolation for PlayStation Plus subscribers. And this is probably one of the most depressing, pitiful excuses for an apology gift you could give your players. They gave them an automatic 5-day extension to their membership. However, the company has yet to provide a detailed explanation as to what caused the disruption. Now, that gift, if you were to break it down into monetary value, the approximate value of a 1-year membership to PlayStation Network is $75, assuming that because you had to have a PlayStation account to be able to get this reward. Basically, they're apologizing to the people who are paying money to PlayStation every year. So they gave you 5 extra days. Okay, 365 divided by 75 is like 0.2. Multiply that by 5, you get $1. They literally gave players $1.02 as an apology for screwing up this badly, to the point where you were basically incapable of using a console you own and games you should own. All because of a potential data breach and or potential issues. And if it wasn't a response to a data breach, this makes it even worse. But the exact details of the issue are exactly what follows in the article, as it's all speculative because PlayStation is being incredibly secretive about it. Network services are fully recovered from an operational issue, Sony Interactive said Sunday. We apologize for the inconvenience and thank the community for their patience. All PlayStation Plus members will automatically receive an additional 5 days of service. So their excuse as to why the services went down, blocking people from playing single-player games, was a reported operational issue. Now, the outage, which affected players worldwide, left many unable to access their game libraries or even launch titles they had previously downloaded. Players looking forward to their usual Friday night gaming sessions were particularly irritated. And like I said earlier, they also prevented you from pairing a disk drive to your PlayStation, because the PlayStations that have the external drives, you oftentimes have to plug it in and then pair it together. But for some reason, because PlayStation Network was down, you couldn't pair something you plug in to the console. It should immediately pair. There should be nothing to pair. You should be realistically be able to plug in and go. And the fact that you can't do that on a PlayStation should be a really big red flag to people looking to buy consoles. Also, I do have to ask about this article. Why do they say the outage was affected players worldwide, including in the US, UK, and Australia, as if that isn't implied by the worldwide part? It's a weird thing when writing, and I notice all these weird little gaps that make no sense. And as I said, this was even getting into single-player games, as one person said, I can't play any offline games I own because my PS5 can't verify I own it. It's on your account, it shouldn't need to verify if it's online. How can you play PlayStation games if your Wi-Fi is turned off? I'm not entirely certain about this because I'm not a console peasant, PC master race, and some exceptions for a Nintendo Switch. But as the outage stretched into Saturday, speculations began running wild. Some feared it could be another security breach akin to the infamous 2011 PSN hack that compromised over 77 million accounts. That incident, one of the worst cybersecurity disasters in gaming history, saw the network shut down for nearly a month between April and May 2011, where hackers stole personal data including credit card details, leaving many players wary of trusting Sony's security again. And at that time, the way that Sony responded to it was they attempted to make amends by offering free games like Infamous as part of a welcome back program. Now that's a lot better than what they did this time. You see, that one they offered you a $60 deal. Today they offered you a $1 deal. What a nice gesture, PlayStation. However, the damage to consumer trust was significant. While Sony has assured players that the latest 2025 outage was an operational issue and not a security breach, the length of downtime has once again put a spotlight on the risks of an always online ecosystem. Now, of course, there are rumors about this as well, and one of the rumors that I have heard, I don't remember where I heard it, but supposedly it was a PlayStation Network executive who knew he was going to get fired, and basically told them, well, if he gets fired, he's going to take the servers down with him, and he basically shut down the servers before he got kicked out the door. Now, whether or not that's true is unclear, but it's something worth repeating. Now, of course, one of the funniest things to come out of this whole debacle is when Paul Tassi, everyone's least favorite journalist, tweeted out, PSN is still down after the 14 hours and no one knows why, via Forbes, probably his own article. GameStop then retweeted that and said, bet you'll want physical copies now. And that is exactly true. You know what I did because I want physical copies of games, and also modern gaming kind of sucks? I went to Goodwill yesterday. I got this Sega Genesis Classic. I got it for $9, and I bought a fucking Wii for $40. And then I bought a bunch of games for cheap. Because I know for a fact that this will never shut me off because the Wi-Fi's out. This thing will always run mostly because the online services are discontinued, but that's beyond the point. I will never have to worry about PlayStation being like, or I would never worry about Nintendo being like, sorry guys, you can't use it anymore. It's bricked now. And this comment from GameStop sparked debates among gamers about the importance of physical media. You say debates as if there's a debate. There is no debate. The only thing that you can own is something that you own. Physical media needs to be the standard. It needs to be paramount. You cannot have a system that does not rely on physical media that is consumer friendly. And of course, the thing that was making it so you couldn't play your single player games without the PlayStation Network was a digital rights management, or DRM. Basically anti-theft and anti-piracy measures that don't work and just brick your computer and devices. It's actually something that makes games harder to run, it makes them worse, it makes them buggier, and it prevents them from being nearly as playable, and it prevents them from being moddable, all because you claim that you want to protect the rights and prevent piracy. As Steam said, if you want to prevent piracy, you just have to offer a game worth buying, and you just have to offer it at a reasonable price. But given the fact that it's clear as day that they can legitimately block your access just by limiting your PlayStation Network access, deliberate or accidentally, it 100% strengthens the necessity for physical copies and, more importantly, games that are completed upon launch, so you don't have to rely on some stupid patch to make your games playable. That is an industry standard that needs to end. And as an interesting point of note, IGN also put out a little poll on their website asking, are you still buying physical games? With 47.9% of the respondents saying that they are buying physical games, more accurately, yes, physical forever. Only special editions, 5.8. Only when the physical games are cheaper than the digital, 17.1. And no, I'm all digital these days, 29.2. Now, obviously, I am in that 47.9, as you can see by my response, and the fact that I'm literally buying physical games and consoles. But I also find it really interesting, this market of only special editions being 5.8. I mean, special editions are more expensive, so I respect people for not buying them. I recently bought the Mortal Kombat 1 Special Edition, well, I bought it when it came out, though I do kind of regret that. And I would have loved to have bought an Alan Wake 2 Special Edition, though I also would have regretted that, because I wouldn't have played it, because the game's shit. And of course, following that line of consumer rights and protection, physical media, and special editions, that reminds me of the story I read a few days ago about the Avowed Special Edition, in which the only way you can get a physical copy of Avowed is by buying the Premium Edition, which is going to run you $95 before tax. But the weirdest thing is, while it does come with a steelbook for the game, it doesn't come with a CD. It is literally impossible to get a physical copy of Avowed, as the Premium Edition just comes with a code. It is an empty box that will never have a game inside of it and is not playable, so what the fuck is the point? And of course, there are also rumors coming from Smash AT that this game's an absolute mess and a buggy hell, even though it launches in only a couple of days. But it's not all doom and gloom to be a consumer. There are people out there who are advocating, standing up, and actively fighting for the rights of the consumer, being the most consumer-friendly marketplace out there. One that I fear will one day go bad when its owner eventually passes. But here's hoping that never happens. And that is, of course, Steam. The greatest marketplace for games to ever exist. The only problem with Steam is they're responsible for the all-digital marketplace, because Steam doesn't actually create anything physical or protect your products. Personally, I believe that all Steam codes should be backed by physical media that they will send to you, or you can request to be sent to you, and I would gladly pay an additional $5 to $10 to own all of my games for good. And while I usually have a huge opposition to the price hikes, I think I can loosely justify it if I'm actually owning the game, that way that nobody can take it from me. But Steam decided to do something that I think is kind of unprecedented, as Valve banned Steam games with forced ads. There is a new rule that appeared on Steam which bans all games which compel players to watch advertisements. In particular, these new rules appear to be targeted at potential PC ports of mobile games, which regularly rely on advertisements for monetization. Developers should not utilize paid advertising as a business model in their game, such as requiring players to watch or otherwise engage with advertising in order to play, or gating gameplay behind advertising. If your game's business model relies on advertising on other platforms, you will need to remove those elements before shipping on Steam. Some options you could consider include switching to a single purchase paid app, or making your game free to play with optional upgrades sold via microtransactions or downloadable content, DLC. Developers should not use advertising as a way to provide value to players, such as giving players a reward for watching or engaging with advertising in their game. Developers should not charge other developers for access to Steam features. These include sale pages, bundles, store pages, franchise pages, etc. I'm going to be honest, I'm a little retarded and I don't really understand what that last rule means. I'm not really sure if they're saying that they're going to paywall this game pages, or if what they're saying is that the Steam developers would pay other developers to highlight their pages on games. Both of those would be utterly retarded and need to not become standard, and I'm very glad that Steam is taking a hardline stance against it now, instead of waiting for it to actually become a problem. And well, of course, I have no issue with ads in a mobile game, especially when I can just, turn data access off on the game and they can't put any ads because they're not connected to the internet. But you know what? You got to make your bread somehow, and that's an okay way to do it. You're going to put banner ads, whatever. You're going to make me watch an ad to get some in-game resources, whatever. I do that all the time in MK Mobile. I watch the ads constantly. But there's a very big difference between a mobile game and a computer game. One that takes significantly more resources to run, one that takes significantly more focus to play. This kind of thing should have no ads on it. Unless, of course, it's like a Flash game or something simple like that, where there really is no groundwork for actual monetization. But Steam is a framework that is an incredibly safe framework designed explicitly to allow games to become monetized while protecting players and the creators. Now, the rules leave room for common sense inclusions of brands and appropriate product placement, such as racing sponsors and logos on skateboards, which is something that I honestly am shocked more games don't have. Real world product placements like the Transformers movies were filled to the brim with, because honestly, I wouldn't mind if I'm walking through a game and I pick up a literal Coca-Cola, because it's just something that's there, because it's something that exists in the real world. It wouldn't break my immersion to have a Coca-Cola, even if I know it's probably a product placement. So of course, as we entered this very familiar song and dance of one side being incredibly pro-consumer and the other one being incredibly anti-consumer, doing practices that ensure that the consumer will get screwed over in the long run, it is kind of interesting to see that we have repeated figures every single time. PlayStation almost always being on the far extreme of trying to screw consumers over to the maximum by having exclusives, by regulating mods to an extreme extent, to requiring PSN to work on Steam-based games, whereas Steam is only interested in getting games to people with no interest in any other thing. Of course, there's also the fact that Sony is constantly trying to censor games, whereas Steam has made it very clear they have no interest in policing content, so long as it's not violating any laws and isn't just a lazy asset flip, essentially stealing another game. And realistically, what should happen now is PlayStation needs to give out a proper apology, a proper explanation for what happened, and they need to make a pledge to make their console more friendly for the consumer, and make it so they aren't pigeonholing everyone to some stupid PSN system, and really putting in efforts to become consumer friendly once again. But that's pretty much all I've got. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think, and I will see you guys on the next one.